Is Christianity only about getting to heaven when you die? If so, who actually gets to go to heaven? If you've ever asked these questions, I'm glad you've tuned in. That's what we'll be talking about today.
Thousand times I failed, still your mercy remains. And should I stumble again, I'm caught in your grace. Everlasting, your light will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all fame. Will above all else, my purpose remains. The art of losing myself in bringing you praise. Everlasting, your light will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all fame. My heart and my soul, I give you control. Consume me from the inside out, Lord. And let justice and grace become my embrace. To love you from the inside out. Above all else, my purpose remains. The art of losing myself in bringing you praise. Everlasting, your light will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all fame. My heart and my soul, I give you control. Consume me from the inside out, Lord. Let justice and grace become my embrace. To love you from the inside out. Everlasting, your light will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all fame. And the cry of my heart is to bring you praise from the inside out, Lord. My soul cries out, Lord. In our hearts and our souls, we give you control. Consume us from the inside out, Lord. Let justice and grace become our embrace. To love you from the inside out. You're everlasting, and your light will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all fame. everlasting, and your light will shine when all else fades. It's never ending, your glory goes beyond all pain, and the cry of our hearts is to bring you praise from the inside out. Lord, our souls cries out from the inside out. Lord, our souls cry out from the inside out. Lord, our soul cries out,
Inside all of us is the echo of eternity. Now, if you're one that believes that there's nothing beyond the physical world, that there's nothing spiritual, that there's nothing that happens after this life, then this discussion isn't going to go very far for you. We believe, however, that because we are all created in the image of God, that we have that spark of the divine, which is also the spark of the eternal within us, that there's something inside of us that looks for that spiritual life. There's something inside us that knows that the physical world and this physical life isn't all there is. And for those of us who acknowledge that, we've probably thought at one time or another about what heaven is. What is heaven? What happens there? And maybe the most important question, who goes there? Stand-up comedian George Carlin has an infamous routine where he kind of pokes fun at religion and primarily the Christian faith. And the routine goes something like this. There's an invisible man in the sky who watches everything that you do. And he's got a list of 10 things that just really make him mad. And if you do even one of those, he's going to send you to a place for you to burn and suffer for all of eternity. But he loves you. And that's where the audience just cracks up and laughs. This stand-up routine, though, unfortunately, actually summarizes a lot of people's views on what heaven is about. And that view shapes the concept of heaven into nothing more than a positive alternative to one that's very negative. And if that's all we understand heaven to be, then we're not even close to grasping the fullness of what it really is. The Christian story starts with God creating us in a world that is peaceful, in a world that is whole, a world that is complete, and a world where joy and love and goodness are the order of the day. But sin is when we as human beings veer from God. And by veering from God, we veer away from love and peace into selfishness, into pain, into struggle and difficulty that we see throughout our world today. But God has, from the very beginning, had a plan to reconcile what was separated, to put back together what was broken, and to find and reclaim that which was lost. God comes to us to do what we could never do for ourselves through Jesus Christ. See, this is one of the things that I think separates the Christian faith from all other faiths. Most other religions are people trying to do things to get to God, whereas Christianity is about God coming to us. When Jesus walked and taught on the earth, he proclaimed the message that the kingdom of heaven was here. And the signs that the kingdom of heaven were here were that the lame walk, the blind see, and the captives are set free. And what he was saying was that the kingdom of heaven is about making right everything that's been wrong in the world. The kingdom of heaven is about those who are on the outside now being brought in. For those who feel invisible to be seen and heard, and for those who are powerless and abused to be protected and defended. For us not to have to fight anymore. Jesus not only proclaimed that, he invited all who would come to participate in that kingdom, to follow him and become agents of the kingdom of heaven, to become the ones who bring peace and love and harmony into the world. Any view that looks at heaven just as a place where you go when you die, again, is really missing the fullness of what heaven is all about. Now, the final question of the day. Who gets to participate in the kingdom of heaven? Well, first, we see from the scriptures that anyone, regardless of where you come from, regardless of your culture, your background, regardless of what you may or may not have done, anyone who puts their faith and their trust in Christ for forgiveness and for reconciliation with God and with neighbor is now able to participate fully in that kingdom that Jesus talked about. There's no prerequisite. There's no entry fee. There is simply faith and trust in God that is made possible through Jesus. But what about the people who've never heard of Jesus? What about the people who live in an area of the world where Christ is not proclaimed? Or what about the people who live very faithfully into another religion? Those are really great questions. While we assert that Jesus of Nazareth was and is God's chosen Messiah, that he stands unique among all other religious figures, and Christ alone has the power to open that relationship to the Father, to open that fullness and that peace and that joy to us, to God. While we believe that, we also believe that God's love and God's grace are big enough, are strong enough to overcome any obstacle. God's love for you and for me is not going to be held back by latitude or longitude. Christ's call for us to follow him and the invitation to participate in the kingdom of heaven is not going to be limited or restricted because we were born into one culture or another. When it comes down to it, I don't think it's our job to decide who's out. I think it's our job to proclaim the message that there is a God who is merciful, there's a God who is just, there's a God who is loving, and there is a God who has made a way for us to participate in a kingdom of peace and justice and righteousness and goodness and love, the kingdom of heaven. If you have any questions about what we've talked about today in the video, be sure you drop them in the comments or send us an email at the address in the video description down below. As always, be sure you like, share, and subscribe. Check out all the other videos on our channel. We got lots of different content that we think you'll love. That's all we've got for today. Thanks for watching.